You are listening to Beyond the Measure, episode 37. Listen as I, a young composer, and my wife, a young choir director, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast for music educators. My name is Christian.
And my name's Kara.
And we are here for season 2, officially a new season for the podcast. This is the first time, first time we've ever done this. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is a podcast where me, Christian, and Kara, my wife here, we just interview a bunch of different incredible music educators just to learn everything that we can from them in hopes that those of y'all that are listening with us can gain some incredible insight from them. We're really, really excited to get going on this next season. We just want to take these first few minutes to give you a little bit of an update on how we're going to be doing the show going forward, in case you have been listening to us for a while now. So first of all, going forward, in case you didn't kind of catch on to this, the past few episodes before this, we will be uploading episodes bi-weekly from now at the start of September all the way until probably around the end of April-ish, mid-April. I think that's about how many episodes we're going to have for going on a bi-weekly schedule. So every 2 weeks, we'll have a new episode. The biggest thing I wanted to mention, actually a couple things. Number one, if you want to have early access to these episodes, if you want to get access to an episode a week early, then you can do so by signing up for my email list. That's just at christianfortnermusic.com/mailings. Not only that, you'll actually also get some free music as well that you can choose from. So that's just another extra perk with that. So that's one big thing. The other big one is our new and updated official Instagram account.
Yeah, we have a new Instagram. The new handle is Beyond the Measure Pod. We're posting the same stuff that we normally did on the other one, but it just looks different. And if you want to keep up to date that way, you'll find out, and we post pretty regularly on there.
Yeah, and that's another thing now that you mentioned that, as far as how it looks. Again, if you've been listening to us for a while, you've probably noticed we kind of rebranded the look of the show a bit, and the Instagram account really reflects that. So if you've been listening, like this is your first time listening, and you've been like binging through all of our previous episodes, I think we mentioned the old Instagram account a couple times, but this is the new official one at Beyond the Measure Pod. So yeah, if you want to become a part of the community and follow along on there, we'd love to have you, and you can just give us a follow on Instagram. We'd greatly appreciate that. And finally, before we start talking about our very first guest of season 2, the best thing that you can do to help our podcast grow is to give it a rating and a review on whichever platform you listen to. We have this podcast on pretty much every streaming platform. Plus, that's actually another thing that we just did over the past couple of months. We uploaded all of our episodes to YouTube. So we are finally on YouTube and YouTube Music, so you can listen to us on there as well. So whichever platform you listen to, please, a rating and review. That is the best thing that can do to help our podcast grow. And then the other big thing is just share this podcast with other music educators or people that just enjoy music that you know are going to really benefit from this. Again, we really just want to help as many music educators as we can. And that's a great way to do that, is if you're able to share that with other people that you know would really benefit from this. So yeah, I think that's about it. Well, without further ado, let's talk about our very first guest of season 2. Our very first guest is Mr. Mike Lunney. We've had a lot of recommendations to have Mike on the show, and we'll start by having Kara read us his bio.
All right. Mr. Lunney has enjoyed a career of 31 years as a head band director. He has taught in various schools, with the last 19 at Wiley High School of Abilene. His ensembles have been consistent sweepstakes winners. Mr. Lunney is retired and living in Abilene, Texas. He splits his time between doing numerous band clinics, conducting region honor bands, mentoring directors, and spending time with his family. In addition, he has an ongoing weekly podcast entitled Ask Mike, which focuses on band directors.
Yeah, so we had an incredible conversation with Mike. Man, you're going to hear it here in just a minute when the conversation starts. He's just one of those people that you start talking to him, and he just has a plethora of great strategic ideas and wisdom in regards to not just teaching music, but even more specifically, creating leadership roles for the students and connecting students within the ensemble, whether that's through, band, marching band, choir, or orchestra. All of these things are so applicable no matter what your ensemble or grade level is. Man, it's just really, really good. I think the biggest thing that he says in this conversation that we really want you to listen for is almost everything he talks about in this episode happens before any students even begin to learn the music. It's not about learning the music. It's about helping the students just work together as a team, and how that is the foundation of everything else that happens in the classroom. And I think one of my favorite quotes that he says in this episode is something along the lines of, it's easy to get students to play together. It's hard to get them to work together. Those are two very different things. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Thanks again for listening. If this is your first time or if you're a returning listener, we really appreciate it. And we are excited to get going here on season 2. So without further ado, here is our interview with Mr. Mike Lunney. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for the invite. Glad to be here, man.
Yeah, how did we get connected to you? We interviewed Jay Lester.
Yeah, good old Jay Lester.
Yeah, we interviewed him a while back, and we always ask our guests to recommend other people, and so you were one of the recommendations.
Okay.
But then he also mentioned that he had been on the podcast that you do.
Right. Yeah, he had been.
Right, and so I went and I listened to some of it, and I said, hey, this is really good stuff. We got to have this guy on here. Could you start just by telling us a little about the podcast, first of all, that
Sure.
you do?
Yeah, it kind of came up as a brainchild with Intune Music. They've got 4 locations, not doing advertising here, but they're in Midland, Odessa, Aledo, and here in Abilene. And there used to be a tradition that Thursday morning, all the band directors would do their first period band, and then they'd head over to, at the time, Caldwell Music, and we'd sit in the coffee place, and all the old mentors would sit there, and you'd play your recordings, and they would just chew on you relentlessly about everything you needed to fix. And we loved it, because they made us so much better. So we thought, we don't have the time to get all these people to show up. How about if we bring the water to the desert and just go ahead and do this and be a little more genteel in how we approach it, so that's how it started. And I have a little, they can ask questions and we kind of expand on those questions. So it's all sponsored by Intune Music. So I'm real grateful to them because it helps me do what my big mission is now as a retired band director, is to mentor young band directors and sometimes mentor older band directors.
Yeah.
Just wherever the need arises.
Cool. And that's called Ask Mike, right?
Yes,
The
Ask
podcast?
Mike.
Perfect. We'll have that linked in the description, so if anyone wants to go listen to that, I listened to a few episodes, and lots of great wisdom on there, and I enjoy listening to it, and I'm not even a band director. So
You're a lucky one.
That's awesome. Very good. Well, speaking of being a band director, could you start by just telling our listeners how you got into doing music as a career? And you can be as detailed with that as you want, but we always like our listeners to kind of hear the journeys of different educators. So what did that look like for you?
Sure. For me, I was going into 6th grade, and I was in a Twining Elementary in Grand Forks, North Dakota. My dad was in the Air Force. And, of course, the routine. Every educator knows you bring over the different groups, and everyone plays and performs. And I thought the gentleman who's the band director, who I don't know his name, he played clarinet. And I thought, that's what I want to play. So they passed out the little papers, and I circled cornet, because I thought that was clarinet. And my dad, who's an Air Force sergeant at the time, he took me down to the music store, and they opened up the case, and I said, that's not what I'm supposed to play. And he told me very politely to be quiet, that my band director filled out that form, and that's what I'm going to play. So now I have a trumpet performance degree.
And here we are.
And so we moved from there to a little town of Iowa Park, and that's where I did my high school and junior high work, was at Iowa Park, a little town outside of Wichita Falls. And Greg Miller was my band director, and I really enjoyed playing and performing, and I wanted to be a band director. We all kind of go through that phase. And then I did not make the all-state band my senior year, and I decided I wasn't good enough to be a band director. So then I decided I was going to be a computer science major. So I did computer science my freshman and sophomore year at Midwestern State University. University in Wichita Falls. And what changed my mind, I was in a group called the Skyriders, which was a top 12 drum and bugle corps, DCI, and from Hutchinson, Kansas. And I was so impressed by our horn instructor, John Simpson, that he single-handedly convinced me to do music education. Wow. So I came back after 3 summers of doing that and did music education. Received my degree, did a little bit of master's work in New Mexico State University, and then I decided I just want to teach. So I taught for 31 years. Probably not the smartest way to do it, but I was a head band director for 31 years. I just never had the opportunity to be an assistant, which I do not say that's a terrible way to do things. You know, if you can do it, be an assistant at anything and learn what you're supposed to do. Because I learned a lot of things the hard way. And then I retired after 31 years after a fun-filled, mostly fun-filled career. And success at whatever level you want to call success. You know, we got the little trapezoid trophies and did the state marching thing. And I've got about 20 kids out there that are now band directors. So that always makes me feel good that they felt like it was a worthwhile occupation. And then a lot of students who've gone on to play in, you know, church orchestras and things of that nature. So it was successful. So now I've kind of based what I do now on clinicking, working with bands, helping superintendents find band directors, kind of a headhunter kind of operation, and then mentoring, doing the clinics. I did 4 weeks of summer bands with marching bands, 1 week at each school. And so I go through and I kind of structure their program and help out wherever I can. And then the thing I do that I like the most is mentoring band directors. And I always laughingly say my job, they say, what do you do? Do you work with bands? I said, well, I provide emotional support and psychological counseling for band directors while pretending to work with their groups. Right. And that's kind of what I actually do, you know, because they come in, oh, the superintendent this, and the athletic director this, and the parents this. And so we go through that process. So that's kind of a long way of going about it, but that takes you from 6th grade to now I'm 61 years old. So it's been a long journey, and I've enjoyed that journey.
Cool. That's awesome. And so all those years of experience that you have, and then experience mentoring other band directors, what do you feel like is one of the most consistent issues that band directors run into? Like, what do you feel like you find yourself having to help other band directors get through most frequently?
I think to kind of back it up just a hair, the easiest thing is the actual teaching of music. Mm-hmm. Huh. That is absolutely simple. I mean, even more so in band than it is in choir and orchestra. I mean, you just teach the fingerings and teach them how to form an embouchure, and they just do it over and over, and, you know, one banana at a time, and they learn. You know, they just do it enough times, they can figure it out. The thing that's lacking has always been, it was lacking significantly when I first started teaching, was the fact of how do you make an ensemble act like a group of civilized individuals and actually appreciate each other and create a product together. That's the hard part. So my first couple of years teaching, like most young teachers, I knew it all. I mean, I was brilliant. I knew everything there was to know about music education. I didn't need help from anybody, and especially from my students or the band or the parents in the program and all these old band directors that have already wasted their lives. I didn't need to hear anything from those people because I knew everything. But then reality hit. I started teaching, and I started reaching out to these other guys. And one gentleman by the name of L.E. Gray, he's passed away now, but he came out to my band hall numerous times, and he said, well, Mike said, I've heard you play your trumpet. I heard you play your senior recital. Heard you play lead in the jazz band. I've heard you play in the symphony orchestra. You played in the Wichita Falls Symphony Orchestra. Said, I heard you play in a top 12 drum and bugle corps. Said, you're an incredible musician, but you suck as a band director. And yes, sir. Yes, sir. He was right. You know, I do suck as a band director. And so he goes, well, I'm going to spend this semester coming out to work with you, and I'm either going to kill you or make you into a band director. Ooh. And he did. He almost killed me. You know, we would do a rehearsal. Then the next period, we'd have a little bit of time for a cup of coffee, and he would tell me, good job, check and roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of hard. It really is.
That can be hard.
He said, good job, check and roll, but everything else you did was wrong. Here's what you need to do. Now, when this kid asked this question, this is how you should have answered. When this happened in the band, this is how you should have responded. But man, he just changed my whole life. He really did. So I think that's the thing we miss the most. And this isn't any sort of put down. You know, there's always kids nowadays,
right.
That kind of thing. But you know, we live in such a society that, myself included, that we'd rather text and email than to call, and even that. the worst part would be meeting someone face to face and looking them in the eye and talking to them is just emotionally draining, And so kids nowadays, it's not their fault. They don't have those skills. They do not have those skills that my father instilled in me by making me do mock auditions and mock interviews in the kitchen on Sunday afternoon, and learning how a person shakes a hand, and learning how a person comes to the table, and learning how a person talks about themselves. Those things were drilled into me pretty stringently, and kids nowadays don't have that as much, and so we've got to try to fill that void as music educators. I really feel like we've got to teach them to be more of that nature, because we have to work together.
What do you think is the best way to go about doing that whenever, like you said, and I know, Kara, you tell me all the time, like you just said, students don't have those skills as much. No. And I don't know, do y'all feel like they're open to learning those, or are they kind of closed off to that? And if so, how do you begin to take those steps towards, steering your students in that direction that is going to be beneficial, but may be kind of foreign to them in that kind of way?
Yeah, even within their family life, it's foreign for a lot of them. Some of them have very highly structured family lives, and that's wonderful. Some don't, and that's okay too, because I've always felt like a kid who's not loved at home comes to school to be loved.
Right.
So, and it's hard, but we've got to realize how to do that. We've got to somehow allow them to feel connected. It's a very, very intentional process.
Right.
There's no second guessing to it. It's just like how we teach a clarinet chromatic fingerings. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's a system that you employ to where first you have to figure out a way that they can be connected, because we've all seen ensembles, whether it be choir, orchestra, or band, or jazz band, that are not greater than the sum of their parts. They're actually less than the sum of their parts. We've all, I think everyone out there that's listening to this would agree with that. We've seen a group and we go, man, I'm listening to him sing, but I just know there's an amazing vocalist in that group, but this is not a good performance. Or then on the other hand, have you ever experienced the fact of seeing just a bunch of, I call them middle-class musicians. They're not the divas, they're not the, but absolutely incredible performance, whether it's a choir, orchestra, or a band. How do they make that happen? And so that became a quest for me. And that quest ended up with Mr. L.E. Gray saying that, your problem is you think you know too much. He said, you think that all information has to come from you, that everything in your ensemble has to be a off product of what you're doing in front of the band, when it's not that way. That's their band. It's their orchestra. It's their choir. And I've done a little bit of orchestra work. I've done a little bit of choir work. I've done a lot of band work. And it is so true. It's an intentional process of leadership that has to be, I hate to say it this way, has to be forced onto them. Has to be forced.
So how does that look like in band? What do you start with to get them into that leadership?
For band, especially for high school band here in Texas, I know this podcast probably goes all over the place, but we're speaking from Abilene, Texas, pretty much the geographical center of Texas. That in band we have a big advantage, marching band. Because with marching band, it is grueling. It is pitifully difficult to do. Yeah. It is hot. It is sweaty. I've sat out there and worked drill sets at 105 degrees with a Camelback on my back, drinking water and sneaking Gatorade into it because I'm 61 years old. And so we kind of gain a sense of connectivity, much like, and I don't mean to equal the two, but almost like a military group. Sure. We suffer together. We sweat together. Yeah, it's all regimented. So we do it that way. But the first thing we have to do to be really intentional is, are we connected? What things connect us? Because whether it's a choir, band, or an orchestra, there's a lot of different kids that have different backgrounds in there, and they're totally different personalities. And that's not true for athletics. I'll let it be quiet there for a second. It's not true for athletics. I know that because my son was a captain of the football team at Wiley, and he was president of the band. And he was a good trumpet player, fullback, middle linebacker. And I asked him one day, I said, hey, Austin, I said, what's the difference? He goes, what do you mean? Leadership in band and leadership in football. And he goes, oh, that's easy to talk about. I said, in athletics, we all act the same, We all do things the same way. We're all from the same mold. So you just basically execute the technique.
Interesting.
So in band, we've got kids that drive a Jaguar to school. We've got kids that drive a tractor to school. I say that facetiously, but it's kind of that way. And we've got kids that their parents make $400,000 a year. We've got kids who are on food stamps. And somehow, as band president, he goes, I've got to get all those kids to work together so we can have a good band. So the way we feel connected is we just have to figure out. It's hard to explain because it gets almost too kumbaya and too cliche and like, oh yeah, we're all just going to love each other and everything's going to be wonderful.
We're like that a lot in the choir world.
yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes when we talk about it, people are almost turned off by it.
Sure.
Because it's like, we got to learn music, man. We don't have time for all this crap. We got to learn music, But it's a very intentional thing of learning things about those students. And the students learning about each other. And it's easy to get them to play together. It's hard to get them to work together.
Ooh,
It's really hard to get them to work together, but it's easy to get them to play together. So to get connected, I'll just give you one example. For our summer band, we would divide up the first part of the first rehearsal into our sections. And so the clarinets would go and the flutes would go. And the section leaders knew about this because I had my leadership team, and I would teach them all year leadership. I have a book of like 80 pages. We go through and teach leadership to everybody. And they take their kids and they go, all right, first thing is, we need some people who can do stupid people tricks. And we had to explain that because they don't all know David Letterman. Some might be able to say all the states in the United States in alphabetical order within 60 seconds. Or it might be to be able to wiggle your ears and sing Itsy Bitsy Spider on one leg. Just weird stuff. So they would all do their stuff, and then they would go around with each kid, and each kid would say their name, the instrument they played, and their favorite movie or whatever question the section leader came up, your favorite restaurant, your favorite movie. So you start to equate that with that's Alex on trumpet likes Mexican food.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you start to equate things about them. And we do it and we do that. And then after we get all the stupid people tricks, they send their people forward, kind of like the Hunger Games, and they come from their districts and they come to the front. We have a little contest, and I won't go through the whole thing, but we have a winner for that or whatever. So that helps. The other thing we do within the sections to help them learn about each other. They have to write down on a piece of paper their 3 greatest strengths as an individual. And then question number 2, they leave blank. There's nothing on it. Question 3 is, what character qualities do you most admire in others? And question 4 is, blank influenced my life in the greatest positive way by teaching me blank. And so they fill out those. So then I would go to you and I'd say, hey, Kristen, I think your greatest strength is this, this, this. You'd tell me what you think my greatest strengths are, and we'd write those on our number 2s. Then I tell you my number 3, I tell you my number 4. You tell me your number 3, you tell me your number 4. Make sense? And it doesn't take long, but it sticks. It sticks big time. Because then the kids later on, they know how to handle each other. Because they know that, I've got a problem with this other kid in the trumpet section, but I do know that the greatest quality he admires in others is honesty. Ooh. So I'd better not lie to him. Mm-hmm. Even a white lie that some other kid would be okay with.
Sure.
I better not lie to him because that's what he really wants to do. So that's just kind of a start with it. Yeah. And it goes into body language. It goes into being intentional with you see a freshman struggling, and instead of chewing on them, at the end of rehearsal, go, hey, John, I saw you had good horns up. I mean, nothing else was good. You had good horns up, said, man, keep working hard. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We're going to get better, man. See you later.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a long, extended thing. Mm-hmm. It's 1,000 tiny touches. Does it make sense? It's 1,000 tiny touches. And if people feel connected, they will take your critique, even if it's a very overt, aggressive critique. They will. If they understand that you care about them. And I'm not saying no one has the license to yell at another person, but there's times when you can be really intense and say, this is not how we do it here. We do it this way, this way, this way. This is how we do it. And if you've already built up that relationship, they will accept it.
Right.
If you haven't built up that relationship, we're all going to go see the principal.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Whether it's a student to student or band director to band or choir to choir, kind of thing.
Okay. Would you like a way to create a special moment, a unique memory that only you and your students can share? Is there a certain audience you will be performing for and you want just the right type of music for the occasion? Or perhaps you're just in need of a piece that has a specific voicing, range, or theme that you haven't been able to find anywhere else. I mean, last time I checked, publishers weren't scrambling to create music for a bassoon, alto voice, and accordion trio, but maybe that's what you're looking for. No matter the reason or the instrumentation, I would love to fulfill your music needs in the form of a commission. If you're unfamiliar with what commissioning me would look like, or even any composer for that matter, you can learn more about the process at christianfortnermusic.com/commission. This includes info such as the step-by-step timeline, payment options, and more. I want to work with you so that we can create a memorable experience for everyone involved, including you, myself, the performers, and the listeners that will hear the music for years to come. Because remember, you never know whose lives will be changed for the better because of the music that came into existence because of you. So are you ready to make a new memory through new music? I am. Take the first step by filling out a commission request form at christianfortnermusic.com/commission. Hope to hear from you soon. So those kinds of exercises you were describing as far as, creating that connection, is that something you only do like at the very start of the year, or is that something that can happen at any point, or does it need to be revisited in some kind of way? I mean, how does that usually look in the timeline?
Those usually start at the beginning of the year, and then it's kind of, cliche in a way, but every section has their traditions that they do that build up over the years. So, for instance, I remember, I don't know if they still do it at Wiley, but the trombones ate donuts Thursday morning before practice. Stupid kind of thing, nothing important about it. I'm sure all they did was complain about me, and that's okay too, because it's get it off their chest.
Sure.
But that was a tradition. So the seniors would pick up the freshmen with permission, and the parents would turn over the little freshmen to the seniors with permission, and they'd participate in those. So it does go through the entire year, because the leadership, which is about, I would say maybe 10% of my band, 15% of my band, they've been trained for a lot of years exactly how to do all this. So it's kind of like they were the disciples of leadership.
Yeah, just being passed down.
Yeah, it's just been passed down. It's been reiterated with their workbooks, knowing what to do. One book I want to throw out there for anyone is The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. Has nothing to do with music, but it has to do with secrets of highly successful groups, and it is a Bible for music educators. I promise you, if you ever get into this thing, you're going to love it.
That's
because
awesome.
It fits everything that we do every day. Because from theory comp to anything else, I've got a theory comp degree from Midwestern State and a trumpet performance degree and a music ed degree, and plus almost a math degree. I was one class away from a mathematics degree, and I look back at all those things I dealt with computers, with choir, with orchestra, with the Wichita Falls Symphony, with the Skywriters Drum and Bugle Corps, with my own bands, and everything that we did that was successful is in this book. Wow. So it's The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, Coyle. So if you want to grab that, you can.
We'll link it down in the description as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a great book. It's a great book. The other one that'll change the life of your music program is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I've ironically, I have started that book but not finished.
Yeah, get the audio one.
Yeah.
You'll finish it eventually. That's what I had to do because I spend so much time on the road that I listen to a lot of audio books.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible, and again, it really has very little to do directly with music. Mm-hmm. It's not like the Inner Game of Music by Green, or the List, creative director books or anything like that are directed right at music. But in some ways, it's more valuable.
So whenever you're looking at a group, let's say you've been called in to, assess a group. I don't know how that usually looks for you, but I mean, let's just say you're looking at a group, whether it's a band or choir or whatever, and you're there to assess, is this a healthy group? Do they have that connection? I mean, what kind of telltale signs are you looking for to figure out, or maybe it's really easy. maybe it's right off the bat you can tell if they have it or not.
That is a really cool question, because I've never been asked that question before. But in order to clinic well, like last year, I spent 30,000 miles on the road and 80 nights in hotels, for everywhere from Houston to Beaumont, to El Paso to Amarillo, working with band programs. And you are correct. There are certain telltale things I can see from the very beginning of a rehearsal. Do they start on time? How are they talking to each other? How does the staff talk to each other? And I just sit back and observe, because that way I can start reforming my lesson plan.
And can I interject right there?
Yeah.
Everything you just said had nothing to do with them actually performing.
Oh, exactly.
Right? Like that's
Classroom management.
yeah, that's before you even start making music.
Kara can attest to this. It's all procedure. You know, if you do all your procedures correct and do all your fundamentals correct, the music will take care of itself.
Wow.
And the things we really push, and this is funny to say it this way, it's all the things that require no talent.
Yep.
You know, the things that require no talent make a group sound incredible. Now, they have to learn the music. Yes, they do. But I just see how kids talk to each other. You know, if the section leader of the flutes, you know, get your horn up. What's wrong with you? Or like, our horns need to be level because we have high standards in this group, and I know you can do it. It's a whole different world. And I just kind of walk through the field just watching kids, and then in my mind, I kind of go, how am I going to approach this group? What can I do to have the most impact in the 3 hours I have with this group? Because I'm kind of like grandpa band director. You know what I mean? I just show up and I sugar them up and I teach them a few things and I jump in my car and leave, and it's their problem. Then I don't argue with any principals or any other staff members, and it's a lot of fun. But I can tell very quickly where they're at, and that's what I listen for is how they interact with each other. It has nothing to do with when they play their first note. Don't you find that's interesting?
Yeah,
you're the first one that's ever asked me that question. Most people don't care; they just want results quick, and so I just don't bother talking to them about that part unless they ask. I just kind of keep trying to make the band better. But that's the first step, is assessing how do they treat each other. I think an important part of that is this a safe place to make a mistake?
Yes.
Think about that. That's a tough one because it has to be a safe place, including the director, to make a mistake. If it's a place of high stress where kids feel like, you know, if I make a mistake, everyone's going to think I'm an idiot, you know, then you're fighting a endless, vicious battle the whole time.
Do you feel like, I don't know how, I mean, obviously you work with bands mostly, but do you feel like that's pretty consistent across the board between band, choir, orchestra? Or do you think there's any variation in that, or is it pretty much the same across the board?
I think it's pretty much the same across the board. The difference is with like jazz band or concert band or choir and orchestra, it is a little more, the information comes from the head person. I mean, we've got that group in front of us. We kind of shoot out things to them. And honestly, I hate to say it, we've been kind of trained to do that. But you'd be amazed when you work with a group, regardless of the musical ensemble, to play an 8-measure phrase and then stop and go, who has an idea how we could do that better? And all of a sudden they're like, they look at you. It's real quiet. It's like in a church with a glass wall between the preacher. They're like, she's. They're asking us a question.
Ball's in my court.
What do I say? I don't know. No one's ever asked me a question before.
Right.
You know, I was really bad about that, especially in my younger years. That I don't think my kids, even like in sight reading, I did this to the last year I taught. They were never allowed to ask questions in sight reading. It was illegal. I said, no, there's no questions.
I do the same thing. Do not speak.
Don't speak, because you're going to say something wrong or you're going to ask me a question. I'm going to say something wrong. Either way it goes, we're all going to look stupid in front of the judges. So it's better if we just all keep our mouths shut and just play the music, you know. But that's a good point. That's a good point. But I think it is the same because it's not a musical translation. It's a human thing.
Right.
I don't care if it's like a committee that I'm on at church as a deacon, or it's a band parent meeting or a choir booster meeting or a faculty meeting. I can tell if an administrator is a good administrator in the first 3 minutes I meet them.
Yeah.
If they're in front of a group, because I can tell right now, this is not a safe place to ask a question. This is not a safe place to make a mistake. And I say that now as a retired person because I can say that.
Yeah.
And there's other administrators I know immediately. This is a good place. This person, this man or woman knows what they're doing, and they're building a team. They're starting to build a culture of goodness here. And if I ask a stupid question, they're not going to laugh at me. They're just going to say, well, we might address that later, Mr. Lunney. I'm not sure. You know?
Yeah. So let's say there's a music teacher listening to this, and they hear you've mentioned those telltale signs, and they're like, okay, well, if I'm being honest with myself, I think we have those problems in our ensemble. What are the best first steps for them to take in addressing those issues and fixing them?
I think the first thing is try to not fix everything in front of the ensemble. It's a personal issue kind of thing. Find those students that are the leaders in your program, whether they're, in an instrumental setting, they're section leaders or principal musicians, or they're your all area choir members, or the ones that are, singing the Abilene chorus, and, they just give a little extra. Grab those students and start doing some sort of leadership. There's tons of stuff on the web. I mean, I have my system. That doesn't make my system correct. It certainly doesn't make it the only system. It's what's worked for me. But do something with them. Explain to them that you're not going to gain anything as a student by putting down another student. How do we respect each other's equipment? How do we respect each other? How do we respect the band hall, the choir hall? How do we act in the hallway? Just keep, and it takes forever. Oh my gosh, it takes forever because they're humans, and they have to hear it 1,000 times, and then consequently what's going to happen is, as the educator, you're going to mess up, and you're going to do something stupid in front of the band or the choir or the orchestra, and you're going to break one of these rules. You're going to yell at a kid. I can't see this. My hand is up. You're going to yell at a kid, but then you've got to apologize. If you yell at them in front of band, you apologize to the entire band or the entire ensemble. You go through the process, and even in that, they start to feel like they're more connected, because they also have to feel like, do we have a future? Do we have a future in what we're doing here? I hate to be so self-centered about it, but as a student, what do I get out of this? What do I get out of this? Do I get a good musical experience? Do I get good chicken fried steak on Friday night? Do I get bus trips to see the football team? What do I get out of this? And so I call it a game of poker chips. It's like, in my world, it's like the poker chips that I have are the trip to the football game and the pep rallies and things like that. And then I say, now, here's what I'm going to do for you. Now, memorize your music for me.
Yeah.
That's the poker chip you're paying back. So
Yeah.
we just push those poker chips back and forth for the whole time. But if I yell at the kids over and over again, I'm giving out poker chips. They hold all the chips. Now, if I do it in a professional way, I start to gain poker chips. And then I can push those back to them and go, hey, now I was really good to you guys on this and that. Can y'all show up at this time for a rehearsal? And I can push those chips towards them, and they're like, okay, Mr. Lunney, we'll be there. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've talked about this on the show before. I can't remember with who, but that idea where it's so easy to forget, especially if you've been teaching for many years now, that we've all been through. We decided to do music as our career and go to college and study, and then we've been teaching all these years. It's so easy to lose sight of the fact that majority of these students are probably not necessarily there just to make music for music's sake. They're there to have that connection that you've been talking about.
No, like I have kids who were literally signed up for the Six Flags just so they could go to Six Flags
Yeah.
at the end of the year. It really is like,
That's right.
what do I get out of this?
That's
And
right.
So
I call those kids the chicken fries. The ones who just want the chicken fried steak
Yep.
on Friday night or whatever the meal is. And you're absolutely correct. I'd say in most musical high school, middle school ensembles, this is maybe being too enthusiastic, but probably 20% are there because they love music. The other 80% are some mixture of my mama made me do it. Mm-hmm. There's no other class to take. I don't want to take a class where I have to carry a book home. All these weird types of things. And like you said, there's a reason my high school band would fluctuate by 40 to 50 members, because we went to Disney World every other year. Think about that, because my band would be 40, 50 kids bigger on the Disney year.
right.
It wasn't because they loved playing Persichetti. It was because they loved going to Disney World. And I think in some ways, if we have to be really honest, at least I'll be honest about myself, I'm kind of the same way. If I want to be part of a faculty in which we see each other with respect, where I can talk to the chemistry teacher and I can talk to the biology teacher and the head football coach, especially in my situation, go down there and take a Dr. Pepper and a Snickers bar and throw it on the desk and sit around and talk for a little bit, and I was lucky that I had really good athletic directors, and I wanted to feel like it was a safe place to be and not feel like a necessary evil for the school program. We have music because, we just do. It's a necessary evil we deal with. We were seen as an important part of what happened. And at Wiley, the choir was seen the same way. We didn't have an orchestra. But, we want the kids to belong. And the things we really push that, one is having energy as leaders, because whatever energy they put out as a leader, you can only expect about 80% of that energy to come back. So you can't expect the kids to come back at you with the same amount of energy. It's dissipated somewhere. I don't know the physics of it, but it's dissipated somewhere. Treat each person as unique. Find something unique about them. It's not just clarinet 41 on the marching field, or alto 4, or alto who sits in this chair. What was that girl's name? She's here every day, never says a word. What's her name again? She's always here but never talks. And then future orientation. We signal the process or the relationship, a signal that it will continue, that the kids know that there's a tradition laid in the program, and the tradition will continue whether the head person's there or not. I'd always tell the kids that if I disappear tomorrow, let's say, I hate to be so dark humor or morbid about it, but if I have a heart attack and I don't show up tomorrow, there'll be someone else up on this podium. And then they'll eventually hire someone. And this whole process will continue, and we're all important. But, we've got to make sure all the students know that no matter what happens, this is going to go forward. And I think a really telling thing after I've done this for so many years is I'll bump into kids. I'm going to Electra they're having an alumni band. And I taught in Electra in 1986 to 1994. Think about that. So these people are now grandparents with me. We're of the same age group. The oldest ones are probably 57, 56, but they're grandparents. But when I talk to those kids, they never talk about the trophies we won. They never mention the sweepstakes.
Right. Yep.
They mention, do you remember that trip? Do you remember when we all went to Branson? Do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when this kid got sick and we had to call someone to come look at him? They remember all these cultural things that happened in the band. And I can say on my own behalf, I really can't tell you exactly what our marching show and concert program was for the 4 years I was in high school, but I have vivid memories of the relationships and the people I met and how I survived through school because of music. Those things stuck with me and made me want to be a band director, be in music education. So those things I think are super, super important.
Yeah, no, there's no underestimating those kinds of things. And we've heard that across the board from, almost every single person we've had on this show, which is just a great testament to the purpose of that. I also wanted to mention, going back to the, having the events, right? Like the Disney World trip that you mentioned, like there's no shame in that being the reason,
right.
Like that doesn't mean
that's right.
It doesn't have to be because of the work you're doing as, teaching music, right? Like it's okay if all your students want to be there. And the big example that comes to my mind is, well, number one, you just never know the benefit of having those sorts of things is going to expose students to music and the love for music. And I just think about Eric Whitacre, who's, one of our favorite composers, one of the most famous choral composers of this time. He originally joined choir for the first time in college because of a trip to Mexico and cute girls in the soprano section. Like that's what he says that in all his interviews. And now look at him now. That's how it started. So you never know.
Right. That's exactly right.
So one thing I want to ask with all of this, you've talked a lot about connection and relationships and the personality behind it all and the importance of that. And I think everybody is agreed on that is something that we need in the music classroom. I don't know if I've, ever met somebody that didn't think that needs to happen. However, I've heard, not just in the music world, but in other organizations as well, that place that, that personal relationship driven experience. You've also used the word system a lot in how you've described all of this.
Trust the system.
Yes, trust the system. And I feel like I just hear so many people, and I understand why, like you hear the word system or systematic or whatever, and it's suddenly all of a sudden it's like robot, not personal. Right. So it's like, no, we don't want that.
It's very unmusical.
Right. But the way you've been describing it is being personal systematically. What would you say to somebody that's kind of hesitant to just that feel of how do you systemize something like this? Is it really still personal if it's in a step-by-step process like this,
That's a really good question. And I would say I give them the materials. You know what I mean? I give them out of my leadership stuff. I go through different schools to help out with that. But even if I don't go in as a leadership clinician, I still try to model that behavior with the actual staff and directors. So that makes it where it becomes where everything is a system. Getting a date to homecoming is a system. Getting married is a system. I mean, everything is a system, and church, as much as that's emotional, as much as I'm a Christian and I love God, that's a system.
Right.
There's a system that's involved, that you do things in a certain manner, and this is our cultural expectations of the group, and this is what we do as a group. And so we try to approach it that way with everyone who's involved. Otherwise, I guess the best way to describe it is I've had directors tell me, we don't have time for that. We've got to learn the music. And I try to tell them with all love intended that sometimes you need to sharpen the saw. So you're just whacking at that tree with sawing back and forth at a dull saw forever, and you're never going to cut that tree down. Where if you just take a second and just back off and spend 10 minutes of rehearsal each day on some sort of leadership thing, and it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be something as simple as I loved having a bulletin board of what they did in other activities at school, whether it be choir, sports, and I would spend about 10 minutes in middle school with my beginners, and I would talk about them being in these different activities, and I'd put little newspaper clippings, and later on we'd steal stuff off the web and print it out and stick it up there. But just 10 minutes, and you would not believe how hard those kids work. Is that false for me to do that? I don't think so, because I really did want them to be better humans. We want them to become better people. We use music as the tool to make that happen. We're not teaching music per se. We're teaching how to be people.
Yeah.
And we just happen to be making music on the side. And I tell you what, even those little beginners, oh my gosh, they could play grade 3 band music that most 3A bands would be proud to take the contest, simply because we took the time to acknowledge what they've done. You're not just band kids. We would push heartily for them to be in the choir, to be in sports. And if they didn't, that's fine. We didn't make, you're only in one activity. Because some of the kids we had, they were what you'd call our band kids. From 6th grade through senior year, they were band kids. They didn't do really much else. And I love that as well. But if you do that, it's a very intentional thing that you do. Anytime a kid gets a brand new horn, we would treat it like a newborn baby. They'd bring it to the front, and I would hold it, and I would take it, and I'd show it to every kid in the band. Say, check out this alto sax. Check this out. Look at this beautiful horn. This is Mary's new alto sax. Isn't this gorgeous? And everyone's like, oh. And then Mary really feels good, because Mary's like, wow. He goes home, tells the parents, and the parents are like, wow, that really had an impact. She really likes band. I don't know why she likes band. We were never in band.
Right. And I bet that's just exponentially increased the sense of responsibility she feels to take care of that instrument and to work even harder with it.
That's exactly right. And to respect other people's equipment.
Right.
Just that respect for equipment in the program.
Well, man, we're sitting at 40 minutes just about, but we can keep going. Do you have any other wisdom you want to share with us?
Well, I think some things we need to kind of really, with my students and with people that I mentor, I talk about being overly positive in your body language to make sure to make eye contact with the students, just like we're doing right now in this podcast. We're not staring at the ground and talking to each other. Kids will tend to do that. And it is somewhat it's a cultural thing. In the Hispanic culture, it's seen as disrespect to stare at your elders in the eye. It really is. That's a disrespectful thing in the true-born Hispanic culture, and I highly respect that. But sometimes with a kid who's Hispanic, I have to explain that. Said, I really want you to look at me in the eyes, and that's not disrespectful to me. Said, but if it's your abuela, said, then you need to be different in how you do that. So you have to be very intentional of, this is my expectation for you. I want you to look me in the eye when I talk to you. Be overly positive. I mean, it sounds almost false, but, you fake it till you make it. There's some days I go to school that I did not feel like I wanted to be in band that day. I was tired. I just didn't want to do anything. But I would just try to turn on those juices and get after it. And after a while, you finally do get excited because some kid will do something really good, and you get yourself kind of excited about it. Be real and be vulnerable. There's nothing wrong with saying something. I've told the band before. I've sat in front of them the week before state marching and go, I'm exhausted. I said, I don't think I can give you any critique that'll be worth anything for this rehearsal. So I'm going to turn the rehearsal over to the head drum major. And the head drum major is going to have the headset and run the rehearsal. And I'm going to stand back here and watch and take notes.
Wow.
And the kids just kind of, it makes an impression on the kids. It has to be truthful. I really was exhausted. It was like, I'm just going to waste their time. If I just pretend like I'm going to power through this at this moment. Let someone else do it. Let a kid do it. Have a silent rehearsal where no one says a word. We do it all through sign language. And we just, play softer, just use our hands and, give them numbers of where to start, and start them with the metronome, things like that. Just do something different to make it where you are seen as a person. It's, when my son was born, I brought him up to the band hall. You know what I mean? So the kids could see I had a son. Yeah. He's 31 now, but at the time, it's like, oh my gosh, Mr. Lunney's a person.
Right.
He actually is a person.
Yeah, he doesn't live at school.
Yeah, he doesn't live at school. And band's not the only thing in his life. And so I guess it kind of put a bow on it as far as that. You just have to make sure that you be the best human that you can be. And then once you demand that level of excellence from yourself, then you can demand that level of excellence from the kids. And again, it's like Greg Popovich at the Spurs. I love studying the philosophy of coaches. He had 5 NBA championships. He's not that great of a technical coach. He was the miracle worker in making them work together. And if you ever have a chance to read, any of the listeners here to read about his life, that's exactly how he did it. And that's how I kind of based my music education off of that it's 1,000 personal touches of emotion. And then you can actually not unload on them, but you can be very aggressive and intense, and they will accept it. They will not shy away from it. They'll lean into it. And I love that when you got a good relationship with a band and you can lean forward and just get on to them about something. And they just lean forward in their chairs like, yeah, make us do it again. Let's do it again, Lunney. Let's do it. So it's that cool moment when you just feel the lightning strike. And I think that's the key to it, is making them feel like it's safe to make a mistake. It's okay to be a human. And music's not the most important thing happening. Think about that for a second. Never is music the most important thing happening, So I think just all in all, that's kind of, to put a bow on it, that's kind of how I approach music education, or human education, using music as a tool.
Wow, this has been amazing. Is there anything else you want to share? I mean, I think that's a perfect final wrap-up thought.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up pretty well. I mean, people that know me well know I can go on forever. They have to run me out of their band halls.
No, that's
Mike. Go get in your car and leave. We got to go home now.
Oh no, that's awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show with us. For anybody listening that might be struggling for whatever reason in the career, and they're like, man, I really like this Mike guy. What's a way that they can connect with you if they need any help?
I guess the easiest way would probably be through that antiquated thing called Facebook. Okay. I know only us old people use it now. But that'd probably be the easiest way to catch me. If you just put in for Mike Lunney, I pay the extra little fee to get the blue check.
All
so
right.
you can find, it's and it kind of guards my account, but I do a lot of business through there, or just Mike Lunney Abilene, and it'll bring up my contact info, or go through Intune Music.
Yeah. Just
look up it's in-tune, TUNE, sound and music. But you'll find it. And I'm good with those guys. They'll connect me with you.
Awesome. Yeah. And once again, the Ask Mike podcast done by Intune is really, really good. Highly recommend it. We'll link it in the description. So if you like listening to Mike on this episode, you can listen to him a lot more on the other
appreciate
show.
The episode. I appreciate the invite to come work with you guys.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you. We'll definitely have to have you on again. This has been great.
All right. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast for music educators. We hope you learned something that will help you stress less about how to teach so that you can focus more on who you're teaching. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a rating and review, subscribe, and share this podcast with other music educators. See you in the next one.